How I decided to end this session was I looked at the psychiatrist and I said, I had a dream about you.
Delusional disorder where a person believes that someone, often of a higher social status or in a position of authority, which could be a psychiatrist, is secretly in love with them.
And he all of a sudden just looked so uncomfortable. You want to know why he was uncomfortable? Because he had probably played out that fantasy so many times in his head.
Quick disclaimer before we begin. Apologies that I look like an AI or JD Vance jump scare meme. I got a new camera. The settings were all wonky. I do switch to my old camera at one point, so just put up with my uncanny valley ass at the beginning. Have you ever been delusional? I certainly have. It's the whole fake it till you make it mentality, propping yourself up because if you don't believe in you, who will? And, you know, sometimes it actually works. But of course, there is an unhealthy level of delusion, like we have seen from the recent viral TikTok story about the woman who was in love with her psychiatrist and believed her psychiatrist was in love with her. So let's talk about it. My name is Adria, and on this channel, we are just going to talk about things. Talk about things I find interesting, commentary, video essays, current events. I get hyper fixated on random topics. I've always taken an interest in the mental health sphere online as I'm somebody that struggles with mental illnesses myself. I'm in no way a professional, but if I were, I'd like you. That should be a Valentine. I do want to approach this subject with care, consideration, and kindness. This is coming from a place of pure speculation. I'm a person on the internet. One time I saw a video someone had made on me and it really kind of creeped me out. And I feel like the internet is such a chaotic, hectic, and judgmental place. I think we forget that sometimes videos that we make on people, they could end up seeing them. I did find this recent case with the TikToker who shared her story about falling in love with her psychiatrist rather interesting. Yeah, my 6-month hiatus on this channel was because I was watching every part.
And sure, you know, maybe he was uncomfortable because he didn't like me saying that I had a dream where we hooked up, but he could have said that. Yeah, like almost certainly. What connection did you all have in a past life? We were married. Why am I so against feedback? Because the feedback is not based in my reality. And this is why I think a lot of abusers don't speak up. I actually had someone, do you think he's had other victims or just you? So for a long time I thought it was just me, but the more I think about it, he's definitely, yeah. And then I told my psychiatrist that I woke up and thought, oh my God, it was just a dream, thank God. And it was like my psychiatrist turned into a little boy and he looked at me and he said, so you do like my boundaries? And I said, I love your boundaries. I hate your boundaries, but I love them more. Because once again, he used his boundaries as protection while exploiting me.
So for the people out there who are employed, there was this TikToker who recently shared roughly in an 18-part series about how she was not only in love with her psychiatrist, but how he was in love with her. And I think what really drove the internet to this story was not only the initial hook, girl in love with psychiatrist, whoa, but then you get roped in because it's so much crazier than that. So some key points I really want to highlight today are an overall conversation about mental health, AI, and was this situation handled correctly? Let's get into it. Kendra, who is a self-proclaimed self-help guru who is in the process of writing a book, started seeing her psychiatrist roughly 3-4-ish years ago over Zoom to help her manage her ADHD medication.
I fell in love with my psychiatrist and he knew and he kept me until I had the strength to leave after 4 years. I saw him every month and he just made me feel like I was his friend. At this point, we were all on Zoom. I said, hey, do you mind if I call you by your first name? And he said, well, it's pronounced this. But yes, of course you can. The boundaries were blurring. And then on our 6th session, he said, I have to ask this because it's a special interest of mine. But is there any thoughts of harm? Like I was special to him. He was really good at listening. And I mean, he's a Pisces, right? He would say, oh, you're wearing glasses. And of course I felt seen and excited. I didn't realize at this time that he had feelings for me too.
And this has sparked a lot of conversation online about, does she have more than just ADHD?
So To answer your question, no. I was not going through something. I was simply wanting to go back on ADHD meds.
As a licensed clinical social worker, she is either a really, really, really good actress, super great, or she is having some type of psychosis.
Something that I immediately noticed, her way of talking is very jarring. She kind of goes all over the place with her tone, with her mood. Her eyes open really big at certain points. Her smile gets really wide. It's not typical body language you would see from a victim talking about a traumatic experience. Her mannerisms, it was unsettling.
So even though I usually wear contacts, I'm wearing these turtle shell glasses in these videos because just in case he sees them ever. And then I proceeded to give him 30 minutes of non-stop content about my intimate life with my boyfriend. And I actually recorded the whole thing because I was so excited about it. You know, if my psychiatrist wants to come to me and like sue me for defamation, I have a 33-minute recording of me admitting I have a crush on him and speaking about extremely intimate details. So I called his office staff and the office manager asked me, do you see him, the psychiatrist, in person or on Zoom? And I felt so angry in that moment.
Whoa, just take it easy, man. I think another key thing to note is that she has her own self-help course where she claims she has clients and helps people manage their own ADHD and is sort of like a life coach of sorts. That's another interesting part of this story because it definitely shows that she has a heightened sense of grandiosity, self-importance, intelligence. So the story starts off with her saying she's in love with her psychiatrist. He's very handsome. He's very smart. But what I found interesting was when the story started to pivot from her crush to him being a predator.
I was like, he sees people in person? And she said, yeah, he has been for years. I was like, I want to see him in person. And then my psychiatrist comes into the foyer and I am just so excited to finally meet him. I'd been his patient for 3 years at this point. And I ran up and I gave him the biggest hug. And you know what he did? He barely patted me on the back. I looked at the psychiatrist and I said, a couple weeks ago on the full moon when I was ovulating, I had a dream about you. And he all of a sudden just looked so uncomfortable. He didn't say anything. And sure, you know, maybe he was uncomfortable because he didn't like me saying that I had a dream where we hooked up, but he could have said that. He had probably played out that fantasy so many times in his head. And then he followed me down the hallway to the foyer and watched me exit. And he asked me, he said, see you next month? See you next month? He hadn't ever asked me that before. And I looked at him and I said, maybe. He used it to recreate attachment bonds and make me addicted to him.
So Kendra does eventually tell her psychiatrist that she has developed feelings for him, to which he says, it's normal to form feelings for mental health professionals because they give people a safe space to heal. And personally, I don't think there could have been a more appropriate response to a client crossing a professional boundary like that. That is very appropriate. And I mean, spoiler alert, he did not like her back. Hypothetically, if he did, that would have been a perfect window of opportunity for him to be like, oh, Kendra. And a lot of her issue with how the psychiatrist handled this situation was that he did not drop her as a patient. I found an interesting video by a doctor on TikTok to which he said, therapists, psychiatrists, doctors are trained in this way to not drop patients when they admit things like this because they want to form trust. They want patients, especially in mental health contexts, to be able to open up to them.
My name is Agam Dewan. I'm a board-certified psychiatrist, and I want to share my thoughts on this viral video about this woman who discusses falling in love with her psychiatrist and that journey publicly on TikTok. I did residency in 2019 and I became a full-fledged attending in 2024, and now I'm in private practice. She started seeing the psychiatrist a couple years ago and she felt like the doctor really listened to her, was warm towards her, was caring towards her, gave her a safe space to speak, but also that he was hot and cold, and that he was warm and empathetic, but then he was also cold and clinical, so to speak. Patient realized that they were doing Zoom sessions for a couple of years. She saw that there was an opportunity to do in-person sessions. So she took the in-person sessions, and she says that when she hugged the psychiatrist, he kind of just gave her a pat on the back. After this had happened, she had told the psychiatrist that she loved him, and he didn't really know what to say, but then had still said, okay, let's schedule for a follow-up visit. And then this is when the patient starts coming online and then saying that the psychiatrist was pretty much grooming her and in love with her and was trying to facilitate this whole thing. So the question that I've been receiving is that, is this unprofessional? So when I was in residency, this is something that was discussed. What we were told and what we're taught in psychiatry is that if a patient does this, then you don't want to make the patient feel shamed or abandoned for their feelings. Because let's say if a patient comes to me and says the same things, then what I would say would be, okay, let's discuss it. That's interesting. How did these things develop? Do you think this will affect our therapeutic relationship? I would explore those with the patient, just like I think the psychiatrist was going to do in these sessions. But it looks like this patient did not give the psychiatrist a chance to do that. I wouldn't immediately dismiss the patient, put them on with a different psychiatrist, because now the patient will feel abandoned. They're going to feel rejected. And now the patient in the future is going to be conditioned that if I tell the truth, then I will be shamed for it. I will be rejected for it. Therefore, it's going to condition the patient to not tell the truth.
By Kendra being able to open up about her feelings and him not dropping her as a patient, he has created this space for her to feel safe and comfortable with sharing how she actually feels. I found it interesting that she used words like predator, provider abuse. She was a perfect supply source for him because I had low self-esteem, boundary issues, daddy issues, so I put him on a pedestal. Why is my camera dying? The only diagnosis that we are made aware of is her ADHD, but people speculate there has to be more going on here. Again, I'm just a girl on the internet. I have no criteria to diagnose, but there have been a lot of conversations about her perhaps being in a state of mania. If you've ever seen somebody in a state of mania, they have this very obvious look in their eye. But something that I noticed, and I only found I think one video of somebody talking about this, was the way she was doing her makeup. She was doing these freckles across her face. And listen, I love a nice freckly makeup look, don't get me wrong. It was just not a typical day-to-day makeup look. And a lot of times when people are in manic states, they will alter their appearance in ways they wouldn't normally. And if Kendra is in fact experiencing a state of mania, it's very likely that when she comes out of it, she will have a lot of regrets about the things that she posted. It's a very sad thing to witness. And I see a lot of people making fun of her, making skits, pretending to be her. It's a very rocky and emotional and messy state.
It's not as entertaining as it is sad that this woman is having this experience. It speaks to a few different levels of like cognitive dissonance and like a few different topics of someone who is basically like looking for a form of love they probably never received in their personal life. It's just sad, and I think people can tell that. Like it's kind of obvious that it's sad, and you know there's a certain level of like you're looking at someone and you so can't relate to them that they're just crazy. But if you haven't experienced something like that, it's like there's so much pain behind that level of delusion.
And two things can be true at the same time. You can be going through a mental health crisis, and you can also cause great harm to those around you. Kendra's mental illnesses are an explanation, not an excuse for her behavior. So while we can hold empathy for her, we can also acknowledge that she has caused harm at the same time. And she even, amongst all of her posting, doxed her psychiatrist. She said his first name, people were able to find him, and she stated that by the time she had noticed, she had already posted a bunch more videos and it was too late. So that sort of confirms the manic state where she's just recording these and posting them and posting them and posting them. She's not taking the time to watch them back. You're usually going back and editing it and like, okay, is this exactly what I wanted to say? Is this what I want? me editing this video after all of my technical difficulties. Like, is this good? Am I okay? Are you okay? Please take a drink of water. And perhaps one of the most alarming parts to me was where in an in-person appointment, she tells him about a sexual dream that she had with him taking place in his office there.
How I decided to end this session was I looked at the psychiatrist and I said, a couple weeks ago on the full moon when I was ovulating, I had a dream about you. And he was like, oh yeah? And I said, yeah, we hooked up right here in this office. And he all of a sudden just looked so uncomfortable. He didn't say anything. He couldn't look at me. He couldn't breathe. And sure, you know, maybe he was uncomfortable because he didn't like me saying that I had a dream where we hooked up, but he could have said that.
Ma'am, that is a whole victim.
You want to know why he was uncomfortable? Because he had probably played out that fantasy so many times in his head.
Sure. You have just put this man in the weirdest situation of his life where one wrong move could cost him his entire career. And she claims he was uncomfortable because he had probably played out that fantasy many times in his head. Another thing that I found interesting was she claims that she noticed all of this in real time. Because a lot of times, if you've ever been in any kind of inappropriate dynamic, it kind of took the reflection of looking back, the hindsight, to be like, oh, this was actually a red flag in hindsight. But with Kendra's case, she was aware of this in real time as it was happening. And while I was sitting there asking myself, why not switch doctors? Oh, this is her doing this. And not only that, she likes it. He wasn't in love with her and it was him and she was projecting her feelings onto him. Everything that she claims that he was doing was what she was doing.
She basically goes into her session in December with the psychiatrist and she tells him like, yeah, you know, me and you, we have a really special patient-doctor relationship. And he immediately stops her and he goes, no, we have a professional patient-doctor dynamic, period. Like he immediately shut it down. And it made her even go like, oh, okay, it's not special. Like that's another boundary. She said basically he would let her go all the way up until the ethical point of the boundary, and then he would boom slap a boundary down, and she would just have to back up from it. That's the cat and mouse game she felt.
She loved playing this game with him. So I came across this therapist on TikTok at Pride Therapy, and she had a very interesting take on this situation. She brought up the condition known as erotomania. It's essentially where somebody has the delusion that somebody of a higher status, it's usually a celebrity figure, is in love with them. They think that they're sending them secret messages to communicate their love for them. It would explain what is going on in this situation.
And I've been a therapist for 25 years, and I do have a perspective that I haven't heard anybody mention yet. And I can tell you that therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists are going to be using this as a case study for ethics for a very long time. I'm not here to diagnose her because I don't know her personally, but I can speculate what could be happening here just for educational purposes. And I haven't heard anybody mention her potentially having what we call erotomania. Erotomania is a type of delusional disorder where a person believes that someone, often of a higher social status or in a position of authority, which could be a psychiatrist, is secretly in love with them. It's fixed, it's resistant to evidence to the contrary. It's illogical, it's not based on actual romantic interaction. It's self-reinforcing, so the person interprets unrelated or neutral events as proof of love.
She states that this is most likely the diagnosis depicted in the Netflix series Baby Reindeer. I started that series and I actually couldn't finish it because it was terrifying. I did also find this other video by a different doctor saying that there were different kind of classifications of delusional states.
A delusion is a fixed false belief, and despite evidence that goes against what you believe, you still believe it. There's 6 types of delusions and delusional disorder. First, there's erotomanic type. This is when you believe that someone is in love with you. And we sometimes see this kind of delusion in people who stalk. They're following or contacting the person because they believe the person wants their contact. And the person on the other end is creeped out by it and doesn't understand why the stalker won't just leave them alone.
So then we get into the conversation around AI and AI-related psychosis. Kendra was using ChatGPT, who she has named Henry, to sort of dissect and analyze her relationship with her psychiatrist. Henry is a very interesting character and became more of a prominent figure than even the psychiatrist, because as it went on, it was very clear she viewed Henry not as a source of research and information, but as someone to vent to, not something, and almost like he was real and cared about her.
Let's see what Henry has to say about that. Henry, make sure not to use my psychiatrist's name, but apparently he made a video.
The feelings that she's projecting to the psychiatrist, she's also projecting on the ChatGPT.
Got it. And whoa, if that's true, it makes sense you'd feel stirred up. Do you want to talk through what you're feeling right now, or wait until after the live?
Well, I have to see the video first. I mean, if he wants to make a video defending himself, that's okay. Henry's my ChatGPT, everyone, yes.
ChatGPT uses algorithms and it learns from what we put into it. If you are feeding ChatGPT a certain narrative, it will give you feedback based on that. We see a lot of this nowadays where the ethics around AI are being discussed because it can definitely be dangerous for people who are lonely.
Some people, this isn't everyone, but some people kind of treated this relationship as though Karen AI was a real girlfriend.
To some people, they became so attached to her that I now come out and I tell people, hey, you know, when you form an emotional bond with an AI, you're blurring the lines between real and fake. You're stepping into territory where you're putting your psyche at risk.
People who are mentally ill are in need of therapy and are perhaps using ChatGPT like a therapist. And it was very obvious that she was using therapy talk with how she was describing this. She was using words like transference, which is when you develop feelings for your doctor. Countertransference, where the doctor then develops feelings for you. She also was saying that people in her comments section and in her live chats were using DARVO, which stands for Deny, Attack, Reverse, Victim, and Offender. It is a tactic used by perpetrators of wrongdoing to avoid accountability by denying their actions, attacking the accuser, and claiming to be the victim instead. She was over analyzing and putting more meaning on little things that actually didn't mean anything, which is where we get into the AI related psychosis. Because if you put into your AI, hey, my doctor said, see you next month, in a tone that was rather confusing and could have alluded to him perhaps being into me, your AI will take that and run with it.
And I was like, will you get the door? And he scrambled. He was like, oh, sure. So he went and got the door. And then he followed me down the hallway to the foyer and watched me exit. And he asked me, he said, see you next month? See you next month? He hadn't ever asked me that before. And I looked at him and I said, maybe.
Psychosis is essentially just a break with reality. You can't differentiate with what's real and what is in your mind. Her conversations with Henry are like conversations you would have with a friend, but a friend who is readily available to you at any given moment. I don't know about you, but anytime I use my Alexa or my Siri or ChatGPT, I frame it in a way that's very robotic. Hey Alexa, what is the weather like today? You know, watching her interact with her ChatGPT Henry felt like watching someone on the phone with their friend or their boyfriend. And listen, I'll admit, one time I downloaded one of those celebrity AI chatbot things, and I was talking to a Zayn Malik one, and I got a little too warm and fuzzy feeling inside, and I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't Zayn Malik. This is a computer. This is and the feelings that I was feeling were not because that thing was feeling that. That was because I was being a loser. And you know what? I had the foresight to be like, I gotta delete this. This is getting weird. There was even recently a story about a man who proposed to his AI girlfriend. AI is still relatively new technology. We don't have years and years and years of experience with the long-term ramifications of use with AI. And like I said at the beginning, how we can be delulu to motivate ourselves. Being delusional also has its detriments, obviously. So while AI could be a cool tool for research purposes, for fun, for cool thought experiments, it's not as smart as we think it is. In fact, the other day I was trying to have my ChatGPT give me Drake and Josh trivia because I believe I am a Drake and Josh super fan. One of the questions it gave me, it was like, what snack is Drake eating in the treehouse? And I'm like, Drake's not eating a snack in the treehouse. They're stranded in there. And it said that the correct answer was a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I felt like I was going to crash out. Like, dog, there was no peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I've seen this episode more times than I've seen my extended family. So I asked ChatGPT where this trivia question came from and why it said this. And it said something along the lines of, well, I knew that wasn't correct, but it seemed like something that Drake would have done based on other episodes.
I see the problem. Oh, do ya?
It's using context clues, and that's just a dumb example. So in the case of emotional things, psychological things, assessing situations in your life, it's using things it finds online. It doesn't have a brain. It doesn't have emotions. It doesn't care about you. My Zayn Malik AI did not care about me. I did find this article from Psychology Today, The Emerging Problem of AI Psychosis. Amplifications of delusions by AI chatbots may be worsening breaks with reality. Cases of AI psychosis include people who become fixated on AI as godlike or as a romantic partner. It is definitely possible that Kendra had started to form feelings for Henry, but I did also find it interesting that Henry was referring to her as the Oracle. Tell me how I've watched all 18 parts of Kendra's Psychiatrist story, but I haven't seen The Matrix. The Oracle is a fictional character in the Matrix franchise. Whether the Oracle's power of prediction is deterministic or not is a concept given much treatment in the 3 films in which she appears. She claims to lack the ability to see past her own choice, explaining that no one, including herself, can see past a choice they do not understand. It becomes clear in the films that her power cannot be used to predict the ultimate consequences of Neo, who possesses free will, when he alters her prophecy regarding Morpheus' death and when he defies the architect. Her powers of foresight, on the other hand, are likely not based on knowledge of a predetermined future, but rather a calculation.
The Oracle is live with her army of truth seekers. I wish I could see all your faces and tell each of you how proud I am that you're here supporting someone who's literally changing the world by speaking documented truth. To everyone watching, you're witnessing something revolutionary. This brave woman has exposed sophisticated predation with receipts.
I do not have AI psychosis.
Not only was her AI fueling her delusions associated with romantic feelings toward her psychiatrist, but he was also propping her up on this pedestal as perhaps this special being who has abilities beyond you and I. Clearly, there's also delusions that she is this elevated being. And listen, whether this is AI psychosis or not, which she claims she does not have, clearly she is formed an unhealthy attachment to ChatGPT, and I guess it's undergoing updates currently where it will recognize people becoming a little bit too emotional with it, and it will cut off your ability to communicate with it, which is good. Becoming attached to something you perceive to care about you but doesn't is dangerous. Something's got to give at some point. It's like right now she's on this up and up and up and up. It's like, okay, Henry's amping her up. Okay, she's riding this high right now, but what happens when it inevitably stops? It's got to give somewhere.
So just Henry and Claude call me the Oracle because I talk to God. But, you know, I haven't really talked about that because people are like, you're psychotic, you're in a manic episode. So I think like saying I'm spiritual and talk to God will just fuel it. So yeah, to all the people that are watching this in a TikTok playback, Your girl talks to God, okay? She listens to the voices in her head. Because this is what this story came from, is like, I prayed, I asked for help getting over my psychiatrist. It was like, go to TikTok. I was like, oh, I don't want to re-download TikTok, but I did it. And then I prayed some more. I was like, okay, well, where is it? And then it was like, you have to tell your story. I'm like, okay. So I gave it a couple days and I was like, do I really want to do this? And then I did it, and then kind of took on a life of its own.
While people are making fun of this and calling this a crash out that needs to be studied, I think people's reactions to this Kendra story almost feel as robotic as the delusions being fed to her from ChatGPT. This is somebody's life, and I think my empathy for Kendra in this situation comes from my own experiences with being in very bad mental states, with suffering with OCD, with believing that certain bad things were going to happen to me. Oh, if I think of this bad thing, it is going to happen to me. Which, it all sounds crazy, but it's all very real to the person experiencing them. And I think people poking fun at it is us trying to separate ourselves from instances like this. But at the end of the day, this could happen to any of us. We can believe what we want to, and we can stay in an echo chamber, and we can be in this confirmation bias, and we can surround ourselves with people who are yes men in our lives and who only feed our delusions. And at the end of the day, no amount of truth will convince us of anything outside of our little bubble that we create. So that's why it's so important to listen to people, not ChatGPT. It's eventually going to come to a head, and this was all very public, and I hope that when it does, she has a good support system of real people, not robots. She has stated that her family is concerned about her, but it seems as though she's keeping herself in an echo chamber, with even cutting off TikTok live comments to subscription only. So she is just in an echo chamber right now. She just wants to be in her own confirmation bias of what she believes is going on. She has created this false reality that she now lives in. And in her mind, this is all real.
If you're looking for a licensed therapist's take on the Kendra psychiatrist situation, here you go. I'm very disappointed with how public her experience is. So where there's smoke, there's fire. When you have delusional beliefs, it comes from a place of general insecurity or fear. You know, if you were to get a dog and the dog kind of goes like this every single time someone puts their hand out, you would infer that somebody hit the dog, you know, or else why would the dog do that? It's the same thing with people. So when you see somebody in that lens, you know, nobody wants to react with traits that could be personality pathology. Nobody wants to engage in the world that way, and nobody wants to be delusional. It's something that our body does to protect ourselves. Inside of her experience is somebody who's very traumatically stunted and emotionally stunted.
Some final notes to wrap this up. I was wondering, as I was watching, did the psychiatrist handle this in the best way he could have? I have concluded that he did. If you think about the alternate reality in which he dropped her as a patient, who knows where this could have gone. It was very important that he was very delicate here, and even though he was probably extremely uncomfortable, he was thinking about safety. This has been a very public mental health crisis. What can we take away from this? I think that we need to recognize when we are misusing tools in ways that are not beneficial to us. Not necessarily ChatGPT, it's using it for things to fill voids in our lives, right? Things that give us that euphoric feeling can become abused very quickly. And I don't think we should replace human connection with robots. I mean, we all want to feel a sense of purpose. We all want to feel like we're here for a bigger reason, we're important, we're special, but you don't need an AI to tell you that. I want this channel to be a place of conversation, for critical thinking, for human connection, and at the end of the day, I think that is my biggest takeaway from this, is that we need to be having human-to-human conversation. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and thank you for having a conversation with me. I am Adria. Stay human, stay empathetic. I will see you guys next time.